Hi everyone, I'm Aaron from Finkton Languages, and in this live stream, I'm going to spend some time talking to you all about input, specifically comprehensible input. And for those who don't know, I usually divide language practice into two main categories. That's input and output. People have varying opinions on which one is more important, the input category or the output category. I tend to find them to be both very important. And in fact, I wouldn't say that, oops, you guys can't see my screen, can you? Sorry about that. I'm sitting here trying to show you stuff and you can't see my screen. Okay, here we have the input category and the output category. Okay, again, people have varying opinions about whether input is more important than output, whether output is more important than input. Maybe you should start speaking from day one, right when you start learning the language. Maybe you should wait a while and do a lot of listening and reading practice before you build up the confidence to speak. All right, different opinions, different schools of thought. I'm not here to say which one is more important today. I tend to find them to both be very important, input and output. And I would honestly kind of say that I put them sort of on an equal playing field where I think they're both important for learning the language. Okay, except for in rare circumstances, like if you're learning Latin because you want to read Marcus Aurelius, then reading is really the only quadrant of this matrix that you need to worry about. But generally, for most of us who wants to learn a language because we want to be able to communicate with other people and just be able to experience the language, experience other cultures, I find input and output to be of more or less equal value as far as being able to learn the language goes. Okay, so with that said, this live stream is going to focus mainly on input. Okay, that's not to say output is less valuable. That's to say that this live stream is focusing on one of the valuable categories of language learning. Okay, now within the category of input, we have two main ways of getting input. That's listening and reading. All right, now there's a lot of debate about which of these two methods of getting input in your language is more valuable. Okay. And before we get into that, I want to really quick just say that I've posted this to Patreon. If you are interested in supporting my channel on Patreon, here, let me just go to my profile really quick. If you are interested in supporting my channel on Patreon, you can go here. I have different tiers for what benefit you want to get in return for your support. And so I will put the link in the description below this video. It's just patreon.com/Finkton. Anyways, back to the point of this video. What is the most important type of input for language learning? Well, we have some people like Stephen Krashen, who you've probably heard me talk about Stephen Krashen before if you've been following my channel for any time. Stephen Krashen is probably the most famous linguist in the field of second language acquisition, okay, or the learning of other languages. Actually, Stephen Krashen says we never learn other languages truly, we acquire other languages. And one of the big things that he talks about a lot is free voluntary reading. All right, he has an entire book that he titled Free Voluntary Reading. And he says towards the beginning of the book that free voluntary reading, or in other words, just reading for pleasure, reading for fun because we want to, not because we're forced to, not because our language teacher is making us read, but just free and voluntary reading is the most powerful tool we have in language education. Okay, first and second, meaning people who are learning their native language still, right? Like if you're teaching a first grader to learn their language, and second language acquisition. So if you are a teacher that's teaching high schoolers, middle schoolers, and whatever their second language is, whatever language you're teaching, reading is the most powerful tool for learning that language. Okay, this is according to Stephen Krashen. Okay, he's specifically talking about language education here, so learning in schools. But this is not the only school of thought. Okay, many of you have probably seen this guy. He has a very popular video on YouTube called "How to Acquire Any Language, Not Learn It." All right, and this video has 2 million views. It's very popular, and it's actually a very good video. It's about 57 minutes long. So if you're interested in watching this video, be prepared to watch for quite a while. But and this guy actually, believe it or not, he has a lot in common with Stephen Krashen. He actually interviews Stephen Krashen. Here is Stephen Krashen. And I forget this guy's name. I apologize. I probably should have looked up his name. Jeff Brown. Okay. Jeff Brown actually interviews Stephen Krashen on this video. Okay. Even though Stephen Krashen says one of the probably the most powerful tool we have in language acquisition is free voluntary reading, right? So Stephen Krashen says that reading may be the single best thing that you can do to learn a language. Well, Jeff Brown, he is also very heavy on input. Man, I choose these really funny still frames. Look at this picture. It just looks like someone just beat him up, right? Anyways, Jeff Brown says that comprehensible input, is very, very important for language learning. But he also says in his video that he doesn't learn to read and write early on. What he learns is how to speak. And the way he does that is by getting a magazine or possibly a children's book, like a Berenstain Bear, anything with lots of pictures. And then he sits down with a tutor. Let me find a picture of him with a tutor somewhere in here. Okay, he sits down with a tutor. Here's his tutor when he was learning Arabic. He sits down with a tutor and they point at the pictures and they just talk about what they see. And this is very easy to do, believe it or not. Very easy to do, even when you are an absolute beginner in the language. Okay, so Jeff Brown focuses a lot more on listening and speaking than he does reading. All right. And sorry, I'm not looking at the comments at all. Here, Marco says, Matt versus Japan says, get really good at reading and then use your reading skills to improve your listening skills. Reading is the best form by far. Yeah, and that's an opinion. A lot of people are of the opinion that reading is more important than listening. That goes along very nicely with what Stephen Krashen says here, where he says reading is the most powerful tool we have. Okay, that's a point of view, and he is not to be taken lightly. This is a guy who has dedicated his life to studying how humans learn languages. Okay, Jeff Brown has also had a very effective experience using only speaking and listening in his target language, right? And he has some guidelines that he has here. Sorry, let me go through here. I'm looking for, okay. I'm looking for where he talks about his guidelines to language learning. Sorry, I probably should have already had this pulled up when I started the stream. Oh, he has a few rules, right? He says, don't learn grammar. Okay. Rule number 1, don't use English, okay? When you sit down with a tutor and you are just going to speak to them and they speak to you, don't use any English at all. He says that's what the magazines and the books are for. Okay, you have different pictures and you can point to different things in the pictures. You don't need to use English or your native language when you're learning a language. Okay, you can start 100% immersed in the target language even from day one. And the way that he does that is he starts with pointing at pictures of people, and maybe he'll say, This lady is wearing a red shirt. Okay. Esta mujer tiene una camisa roja, right? Une chemise rouge, right? And you just point at the lady in the red shirt. Then you point at the man in the blue shirt, and then you go back and forth and you say red shirt, blue shirt, woman, man. You don't need to use English. You don't need to use your native language. You just use whatever language you're speaking. Okay, and then the students will understand when a tutor does this in their native language. Okay, you don't use English. You don't, where's his second rule? Rule number 2, you don't, oops, let me find it in here. You don't learn grammar. There we go. Rule number 2, no grammar. You don't discuss adjectives and nouns and verbs and objects and subjects and direct object pronouns and indirect objects. You don't discuss all of that stuff. You just speak. You have a conversation with one another. You use the pictures, you point, you tell stories, okay? And this is how children learn, by the way, right? No parent actually teaches their child the rules of English. They don't tell you how to form a plural or how to use the past tense. They just speak to you slowly and clearly, and they use a lot of pointing and gestures and stuff, and they do things to help the child when the child can't understand. But we don't teach grammar to children, and that's what he says we should do in second language acquisition as well. Then he says no corrections. All right, when we make a mistake, you don't worry too much about it because mistakes are not a big deal. Okay. You speak to each other and then you get lots of input, and then over time you'll just start to get a feel for how the language is supposed to exist. Okay. So which of these is easier? Which method of input, the listening or the reading, is easier? I find that for the level that I'm at in French and Spanish and languages that I'm more advanced in, I can do a lot of reading and it's pretty easy. Okay. I can just find a book that I want to read. It's very easy to find books in French, Spanish, Esperanto. I can find a book in any language I want, right? You just go, especially nowadays with the internet, you go to Amazon, maybe you have a Kindle, you can go on Link, which is, I find, a great resource for learning languages, learning to read and write, and not write, mostly reading. There's all kinds of ways to get reading material in your target language. And as you're reading through a book, you don't worry about understanding every word, right? This is what Stephen Krashen talks a lot in his free voluntary reading. You don't worry, you're not going to be quizzed. There's not a test at the end of the book. You just read through for pleasure. You read through for fun. And if you miss a word here or there, it's no big deal. All right, which is also what we usually do in our native language, right? Especially as children, when you're reading through a book. And as a child, there's a lot of words in this novel that you don't understand. You can usually get the gist of what the word means based off of context, right? If two people are having an argument and it says, he yelled furiously, and you don't understand what furiously means, but you kind of do, right? Because they're having an argument and he's yelling, and he yelled furiously. He didn't yell kindly. He didn't yell gently. He didn't yell softly. He yelled furiously. So even if you don't know what the word means, you sort of start to pick it up, okay? But even in cases where you can't understand the meaning of the word based off of context, you don't worry about that. You skip that word. It's probably not very important unless this word keeps coming up over and over and over again. And then you just do a quick lookup for that one word, and then you learn what the word means, and then you keep reading. Okay, but generally speaking, by and large, 99% of the time, when you come into contact with a word that you don't understand, you just skip it. Don't stress about it. Which is hard for some of us to do because a lot of us are perfectionists and we want to understand everything in the book. But Stephen Krashen says that's not the best thing to do. The best thing to do is just read through for fun, for pleasure. Okay. How easy is it to get this kind of language practice that Jeff Brown talks about. It can be done, right? Like there's italki, there's Link, there's other websites like VIP Kids or takelessons.com. There's websites where you can find a tutor and you can tell them exactly how you want your lessons to go, right? Maybe you might not be able to sit down with a tutor if you don't have one, like, where is it? Like Jeff Brown does, right? Oops, what's going on here? Where Jeff Brown just sits down with a tutor and then they kind of have a conversation, right? And they have, right? And they can point at the pictures and they can discuss what's going on. But it's very easy to do things like screen shares, okay? And it's very easy to do something quite similar to this over the internet now that, digital tools are becoming much more powerful. And I want to tell you a little bit about this YouTube channel that I found called Comprehensible Thai. Okay, so if you're learning Thai, this is a great resource that I just found a month ago. Actually, this channel is brand new. It's only been out since December of last year, so about 2 months now. And the point of this story is the point of this channel is that they go through stories. Okay, they go through a lot of different pictures and stuff. There's tutors. Okay, and let me see. Where's a good one? Here's one of my favorite videos because it exemplifies very well exactly what Jeff Brown talks about in his video. Okay, so here's Crew Jerry. And Crew Jerry goes through different pictures of houses. Okay, like early on, he shows a picture of a house outside the house, and he's like, "All right, here is the roof. The little boy is making a roof." He says this all in Thai. The entire video is 100% in Thai. Okay. He said, here are different rooms. The room has a door, right? And then he points to the door. He points to the window. It has a wall. It has a pink wall, right? And you just start to pick up on all of these vocabulary words. He compares a big house and a small house, a house with a big garage, right? Then he goes through the rooms. He said, this is the bed. The bed has pillows. The bed has a blanket, a blue blanket. There are pillows over here on actually, I don't even know what this is. A bench, I guess. There are pictures on the wall, 2 pictures on the wall. This room has pictures on the wall. And you just start to pick up on exactly what he's saying, regardless of whether you speak Thai or not. And it's very easy to do with objects like this. That's why this video about the house is very easy to understand because he's pointing, he points to the TV and he's talking about a TV. He points to the couch and he's talking about a couch. He points to the pillows and you remember the word pillow from the previous slide, right? He talked about the pillows over here on the bed, the pillows on the couch, on the bench, and then the pillows on the couch. And then you just start to recognize the word for pillow without using any English, without using any of your native language. Okay, I've been using this website, this YouTube channel for about a month or almost 2 months, and it has been very beneficial for myself learning Thai. And it actually inspired me to create my own English channel. Okay, so if you're learning English, I highly recommend you check out Fingtam English, which I will also put in the description below this video. So Fingtam English is just dedicated to comprehensible input in English for those who are learning English. And I just go through different stories, right? We have a story about a cat, story about a little girl making a snowman, story about a dog and cat chasing each other. I go through the whole Mr. Spock thing. Mr. Spock has 2 ears. He has 2 eyes. He has 1 mouth, 1 nose, all the easy stuff that doesn't require your native language to understand. You can listen to me speak for the entire video entirely in English, and you will understand pretty much everything I say. And that visual cue is very useful in helping to understand the audio component. By the way, I'm going to stop here for a second and just take a look here. Buenas noches, 10 p.m. in Colombia. Yeah, I know. I'm streaming at kind of an awkward time for a lot of people because I live in Thailand on the other side of the world. Marco Edwards says, anyways, great content. You just got a new subscriber. Thanks. Appreciate the sub. Brazil. All right. What's your opinion on learning multiple languages? Is it counterproductive? Yes. Yes, it is counterproductive if you want to learn your languages very well, right? If your goal is to learn languages well, then you're going to want to focus on one. Okay. But that's not everyone's goal. Some of us want to learn many languages. Okay. I might be having some connection issues here. My connection is unstable. Hopefully you can all hear me pretty well. Anyways, if your goal is to learn many languages to some extent, then that's your goal. Then that's what you want to do. Okay. I would personally rather speak many languages at a level B1 than 2 languages at C2. Right, so that's why I focus on Spanish, French, Thai, Esperanto, Tokipona, some other languages. Please let me know, by the way, if my connection is bad or if you're having trouble hearing me, seeing me. Okay, so it all depends on your goal. Okay. Yes, if you try to learn more than one language at once, you definitely will not learn either of them as well as you could. Okay, focusing on one language is better for your level in that one language. Not all of us wants to limit ourselves to just learning one language though, right? So ask yourself the question, what do I want to do? What are my goals? Not what anyone else says I should do. What are my goals? And then base your decision off of that. Okay. I'll keep answering questions, but specifically if you have any questions about reading or listening in your target language, I'll try to prioritize those questions first. Okay. Mar Negro says, what about if you study a grammar book making a lot of sentences? I think I'm learning a lot with sentence structure and listening to them too. I'm buying a book in French. Okay, so I have a mixed relationship with textbooks, specifically with language textbooks. Okay, and it's not even really that mixed. I don't like language textbooks. I don't hate them. I just don't like them. Let's put it that way. And Jeff Brown in this acquired language video, he has a very similar opinion to mine. Okay, now grammar isn't bad. Okay, where does he say? Grammar isn't bad. Many of us have an interest in grammar. Okay, I'm looking for where he specifically talks about this, but it's okay. Many of us have an interest in grammar. Right? Many of us, we enjoy it. We find it interesting. It's pleasurable to learn about grammar. Fine. If you want to learn grammar, you can do that a little bit. Okay. Maybe read a page of a textbook, go to a textbook when there's something specific that you want to clarify. You can do that. Okay. The problem is when we think that our language learning is going to come from reading a textbook. It will not. Okay, reading a textbook will not teach you the language. That doesn't mean you can never read one. It means that's not where language learning comes from. Language learning comes from these 4 quadrants: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Okay. In fact, Stephen Krashen would say, acquiring the language comes only from these 2 quadrants right here, right? Only from input. That's the only way we acquire a language. I find that speaking is very important, and Stephen Krashen, I'm sure, would agree that at some point you need to start speaking if you want to be able to speak, right? the point is, at no point in this discussion does Stephen Krashen say you need a textbook to study grammar. A grammar book is not necessary. It's not needed. At the very best, it's not necessary. And at the worst, it's harmful. And the reason it's harmful is because a lot of people dedicate so much time to the grammar book. They just want to do exercises in their workbook. They want you to keep reading about grammar rules, and it's just a waste of time when your goal is to learn quickly. Okay, that's how a grammar book can be harmful. At best, a grammar book can be kind of interesting. Okay, but it will not take you to where you want to be in the language, though. A grammar book will not bring you to fluency. It will not solve your problems for you. Let's put it that way. Okay. If you want to learn a language, you have to use input and output, not grammar books. Okay. Mar Negro also says, I think I'm learning a lot with sentence structures and listening to them too. Right. So what you should be doing if you want to get good at a lot of sentence structures is this one right here. Reading. Okay. Now you can focus on sentence structures to a certain extent. Okay. There's a website there's an app called Closemaster that I've been using recently. And I'm still sort of developing my opinion of Closemaster, but so far it's interesting. And the way this works is that you just see a sentence written in your target language. Okay. And you just read a sentence and you have to figure out which word goes in where. But you're exposing yourself to lots of sentences, okay? Now, these sentences that you see, the sentences that you read, follow grammar rules, okay? But you do not memorize the grammar rules. You basically memorize the sentence, not the rule. You memorize the sentence. You read the sentence, you listen to the sentence, okay? Sometimes you repeat the sentence out loud, so you're practicing speaking the sentence, and that's how you learn grammar. You don't learn grammar by memorizing the rules. You memorize grammar by exposing yourself to it, okay? And with Closemaster and other things, Glossica, anything that exposes you to lots of sentences, specifically reading, right? Reading and listening. You could go through a novel, read through a novel, and you're exposing yourself to lots of sentences. Whatever it is, however you're exposing yourself to these sentences, that's how you pick up the grammar. Okay. I could tell you 100 times in Spanish, the adjective comes after the noun. And I could tell you that in every single language lesson. Okay. If I'm your tutor and I tell you that every single time, remember, in Spanish, the adjective comes after the noun. It will not be as powerful. It will not be as good of a reminder as if you simply read through a whole bunch of sentences that have the adjective come after the noun, right? I'm teaching some young boys Spanish right now over, I teach online. Specifically I have two boys that I'm teaching Spanish to. And I go through a lot of example sentences, right? Yo veo un perro blanco. I see a white dog, right? And then when I ask them to repeat the sentence to me, a lot of times they'll say something like, Yo veo el blanco perro, which is backwards, right? You're supposed to say el perro blanco, the dog white. But for us English speakers, it doesn't make a lot of sense because in English we say the white dog, okay? Spanish puts that backwards. Spanish and English are opposites in that regard. And I could tell them, no, in English, the color comes before the dog, but in Spanish, the color comes after the dog, right? I could tell them that every single time. But these boys are starting to get, after lots of exposure, they're starting to remember, wait, in Spanish, I say el perro blanco, not el blanco perro. And it just takes a lot of time, a lot of repetitions. But it would be meaningless to them if I just said, remember to put the adjective after the noun. Okay, that's not how we learn languages. And then Mar Negro finally says, I'm buying a book in French too. Excellent. That's 100% what you should do. I agree. Okay, GVP says, I'm learning German and French in the same time. I would like to learn more, but I can get confused. Yeah, you definitely will get confused if you're learning 2 languages at once. Yep. Yeah, that sounds right. Which isn't to say you can't do it, it's just to say it's hard. And it will make things a lot more difficult if you do that. I mix those languages up too. Yeah, the worst was for me when I was learning French and I would constantly use a Spanish word in French. Also Esperanto, I do that all the time. Yeah, stuff. Okay. Is it better to read book while listening to its audio version? If you can, that's great. And that's actually the entire point of Link. I'll show you guys this. Oops. I guess I'll just share my screen really quickly. Okay. Link is great. Let's go to link.com. Because you do a lot of reading and listening at the same time. Okay. Right now, I'm actually reading through. I'm reading through Les Mis. Let's see. I have a lot of songs in here. I'll just show you really quickly. Okay, so I put this song, I imported this song into Link, right? It's called Le Chaque Acteur. And then I can, and usually you do this with like stories or podcasts or something, but I like to do it with music too, right? And then I can just play the song. Right? And then I just listen to the song as I'm reading through. And then when there's a word that I don't understand, I said that you can just skip over it, but Link just makes it so easy to just click that word. You just click that word, and then you can see what it means, right? Barak. Right. It just makes it really quick to just click that word, and then you understand, and then you keep going. It doesn't take a long time out of your reading to do that, and so Link is great. By the way, if you are interested in Link, if you're interested in subscribing, because they have a free version here on Link, but the free version, I always say this, and it's not to talk bad about Link, but the free version really is not good. Like, you're very limited with what you can do. You only have a certain number of links that you can create every day. The free version of Link is not worth it, but the paid version is very good. And if you are interested in doing that, let me pull up the link here. Link.com. It's link.com/Finktum, I think. Something like that. Finktum. I have a link that you can save on your subscription to Link, but I can't remember what the link is right now. Let me just pull it up over here. Just 1 second. Okay, it's link.com/en/Finktum languages. So I'll just put that in the chat if you are interested. Link.com/en/Finktum languages. And oops. If you use that, then you can save 35% on Link. And then I will also get back like a small percentage of that to come back and support my channel. Link.com/en. Yeah. And then you sign up and you save 35% if you, if you're interested in that. If not, no big deal. But if you're already going to subscribe to Link and you want to save some money, and you can also support my channel, so that would be great. Okay, let me see here. Who would you consider a polyglot? A person who speaks 5 languages at a B2 level, a polyglot, versus a person who speaks 15 languages at an A2 level, also a polyglot? Yeah, sure, I guess. The word polyglot is kind of like the word fluent. Everyone kind of has a different definition. Some people will say you have to speak 5 languages you have to speak 5 languages to be a polyglot. I don't know. I don't really think it has a number. I think polyglot just means someone who speaks multiple languages, someone who speaks, like what's a polygon? A polygon is a shape with multiple sides, right? So I don't know. Anyone who speaks multiple languages to me is a polyglot. Did I get the definition of polygon right? A plane figure with at least 3 straight sides and angles. Yeah. Okay. So I guess maybe if you speak 3 languages or more, then you're a, again, definition, it's just a word, whatever you think that word means. Words only mean what people agree on them meaning, right? It's like a dollar bill. Dollar bill is only valuable just because everyone agrees that it's valuable. Really, it's just paper. It's like fiat. That's what a word is. They only mean something when we all agree that it means something. Okay, is there a point when reading subtitles in the target language while simultaneously listening to the spoken language? The spoken target language can be problematic. When should I get rid of the subtitles? No, that's not a problem. You can read subtitles in the target language and listen to subtitles. The only problem I find is that sometimes the subtitles are different than what is actually spoken. So that can be kind of a problem from time to time. It's not usually a huge deal, though, in my opinion. I don't think that's a huge deal. I would even say that you could even use subtitles in English, to tell you the truth, and still listen to the target language, and that has some value. Not as much, because you're going to spend most of the time reading English, but I do it for fun sometimes. If I'm going to watch Netflix anyways, I might as well watch a show in Thai that I can't understand the spoken Thai, but I understand some of it, but I wouldn't really be able to follow the story very well. So I can put on the English subtitles, and it's not like focused study time, but if I'm going to be watching Netflix anyways, then I can at least get a little bit of exposure to Thai while I'm doing it. Marco Edwards says you should stop using subtitles as soon as possible. Get out of your comfort zone. I would say that it's more about what is a feasible goal for you to do regularly, right? If you watch a movie and you don't understand anything in French or whatever language you're learning, and then you just give up because it's too tough and you were bored because you didn't understand the movie, that's not as useful as if you use French subtitles and you can read through and understand more, and then maybe you have more motivation to keep watching the movie. That's going to be more valuable, even with the subtitles. Okay. And again, reading is something that you can never grow out of, right? Like, so subtitles aren't bad, especially if they're in your target language. Eventually, there will become time to get rid of the training wheels if you're using English subtitles. But subtitles in your target language aren't, that's reading practice too. Okay. I remember a while ago seeing a thing about different types of learners. This is from a guy with a hand. Interesting screen. Different types of learners, not just for languages, where there are people who learn from audio input, others visual input, others from reading, etc. Yeah, and that will, there's going to be different people who have different preferences in language learning too. With that said, though, we all learned our native language the same way, right? It's not like it's not like your parents had to determine what is your learning method and then apply that to teaching you the language. It's like if a child gets exposed to enough input, they will learn the language, period. That's just it. And, you know, we still are doing research on what's the difference between how children learn and how adults learn. But as long as you are receiving input and you understand the message behind the input in the language, you will make progress in that language. Now, if you're not doing it very much, as long, you know, maybe you're older and, you know, your brain isn't as plastic as it was when you were a child, there are things that will slow down your progress. But by and large, for the most of us, if you're receiving sufficient input, then you will improve in the language. And you will never reach a point where you actually sound like a native speaker. A lot of us have that goal. Like, if I keep studying, then people will mistake me for a native speaker. Yeah, it's possible that someone on occasion might mistake you for a native speaker. If you get really, really good. Even possibly if you just get pretty good, you know, you can get to a C1 level and be to the point where people occasionally mistake you as a native speaker. You will never speak identically to a native speaker, though, right? There will always be some distinction between you and how a native speaker speaks. Okay, so that's not to discourage you. That's just so that we set realistic goals for ourselves. Just got here. Did Link finish the interface update they were working on? Oh yeah, I think they're coming out with like Link 5.0 or something. I don't believe they've updated it yet. I am awful at learning from reading. This is from a guy with a hand. I am awful at learning from reading and listening. That thing told me I learned from experience, input, or something. So I started imagining myself in experiences using the language, and it made me fly through. Yeah, that's great. I mean, immersing yourself in the language, you know, but if you do that, then you're still getting input and output, right? And a lot of times when people talk about your different types of learners, they're talking about like learning about knowledge, right? Like for people learn math in certain ways when you have to sit down and like study the math. Okay, again, that's not how we learn languages, though. And I use the word learn because I feel like most people understand what I mean when I say learn a language. There is a certain school of thought that says you don't learn languages. Like you don't sit down and study and acquire the knowledge of a language. You acquire the language itself. And it's almost all subconscious or implicit understanding of the language, right? So Stephen Krashen and also Jeff Brown, here, let me share my screen again. Remember, the name of Jeff's video, his famous video, 2 million views, is how to acquire any language, not learn it. Okay, so yes, we have different types of learners, different learning methods. They don't all apply to language learning, though, because even though I use the word learning, that's not really what's going on. We don't. You don't want to study and then get an explicit knowledge of the language. That's not enough. It has to go a lot deeper than that. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. Okay, is there a downfall to listening to your target language for more than 6 hours a day and just brutally throwing yourself at the language with reading as well? The downsides to that would be if you start to get bored and stop doing it. Okay, that's the only downside. Also, if you get bored and you stop paying attention, like if you force yourself, you say, I am required to listen to the language for at least 6 hours a day, no matter what. And then you stop like paying attention and then you eventually give up. You know, it's better to come up with a consistent plan and stay regular. Now, if you are motivated enough and dedicated to listening and reading for 6 hours a day, and you can do that, and there are some people who can, yeah, that's great. If you can listen to the language for 6 hours a day and get that much input, that's excellent. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't burn yourself out and then give up. That's what I would be worried about. You have to do other things in your life other than just learn a language. Now, the great thing about input, by the way, is that you can get input while you're doing other things that interest you. Okay. I'm reading Les Mis in French, and part of it is just because I like reading books. I enjoy, and I've seen the movie of Les Mis, and I've seen play adaptations of Les Mis, and I like the story, and so I want to read. Okay, and it happens to be in French, so I'm also learning French. But reading is something that I want to do in my free time too, right? That's why on my English channel, by the way, let me share this with you again for those who are just coming. I have this English channel. It's called Finctum English. It's for anyone learning English. And what I do is I go through stories, right? Like, I go through a story of these people camping, and I try to make it interesting, because really what you're doing is watching a video about people that are going camping. I'm starting a new series here called Chess in Easy English. Okay. And so what I do here is I'll play through a game of chess. If you're interested in chess like I am, and you can watch a chess game, which is something that you might do in your native language, except you can do it in easy English. And I play through a game. I explain what I'm doing in this chess game, right? I say, all right, I move my bishop. The bishop moves diagonally, and then I move the bishop, right? And then I move my knight. The knight moves in an L shape, an L, because it looks like the letter L, right? The queen can move in any direction, okay? And yes, I'm teaching you something while I do it, but it's not like, let's sit down and study the grammar of English, okay? It's like, let's play a chess game together, and it happens to be in the language that you're learning. So again, if you're interested in learning English, I'd recommend signing up for my channel and giving me a little like there, if you don't mind. Especially if you're interested in chess, right? And this is the key feature of learning languages with input. If you're interested in chess and you would already watch videos about chess, or if a video about chess sounds interesting to you, regardless of what language it's in, then you might as well do it in a language that you're learning. Get my point? Ryan says, reading is more important when noob. Listening is more important at advanced. I disagree, actually. And it's not to say that there's not advantages and disadvantages to both types of learning at all stages, right? I said in the intro to this video, let me share this again. I said in the intro to this live stream that I find input and output to be equally important. More or less equally important, with some advantages earlier and some disadvantages later, but overall I find input and output to be of equal importance. Reading and listening I also find to be of more or less equal importance. It doesn't mean they are equal. It means that one isn't more important than the other. They're different. Okay, you use them differently, but there's not one that's better or worse than the other, in my experience. Okay, reading early on, okay, especially for me learning Thai. Let me show you. Many of you already know this because I reference this book all the time. For me learning Thai, here's a book in the Thai language. I had to learn a whole nother alphabet, and it happens to be a very difficult alphabet. And it's also hard because in Thai, there's no spaces between the words. I have to figure out word boundaries by myself. That's hard. Okay. So for me, learning Thai was learning to read Thai was a lot more difficult than getting some listening practice and speaking, right? I did Pimsleur a lot from the very first day of using Thai. So I got listening and speaking practice from Pimsleur. It took me a long time to get to the point where I could start reading. Okay. And, you know, that's what Jeff Brown talks about a lot in his video, How to Acquire a Language. Like, especially for Arabic, he was learning Arabic in this video, and they have a different script. That's hard to learn. Depends what your goal is. If your goal is to be able to read the Quran, then yeah, maybe reading is more important. Learning to read Arabic is more important than speaking it. But he wants to learn how to speak to people, right? And you can't do that when you're just reading a book by itself. It's a different skill. And in order to acquire the skill of actually being able to communicate with people, you have to sit down with a human being and practice talking to them. Okay. And especially for a language with a different script, that's going to be a lot easier earlier on. So no, I wouldn't say as a general rule that reading is more important earlier on and listening is more important later. I don't agree with that. There is something to be said for learning to start reading early on. Okay. And that's a strategy that some people take and like and enjoy. And yeah, cool. That's fine. Hello, language come up. Thanks for joining. Hello, hello. Yeah, that's a strategy. That's something to consider. Another strategy to consider is what Jeff Brown does. And he just focuses on speaking and listening. He focuses on learning the language itself early on. And then later on, you can start to learn to read and write if you so desire. And that's how children learn to read, right? We learn our language first. We learn our native language first, and then we learn to read. A Campos says, sadly, Link didn't work well for me as a beginner Hebrew learner. Not enough or interesting reading content. Good app, but pricey though. Yeah, it depends on the language to some extent. And yeah, they have the mini stories, which are pretty good. I find them to be pretty good for absolute beginners. When I first started learning Greek, I was able to work through the mini stories. Okay, and for an absolute beginner, that's work. You know, like, you don't know any words in the language and you have to go through, and it's a little bit of a grind going through a book, you know, even if it's a 3-page book, a 3-page story, but as an absolute beginner who doesn't know any words, it's work to go through that. Yeah. I don't find Link to be the absolute best resource for absolute beginners. I think Link can be a good resource for absolute beginners. It's helpful. It's a supplement. Within the first month of your language learning journey, that's the only time where I find Duolingo to be better than Link. You should pretty quickly outgrow Duolingo, and Link should pretty quickly become more and more relevant to your language learning, in my opinion. Okay. Hey, from Arizona, tips on turning passive to active. Are you talking about passive input and active input? Like, so for example, I can get active input by sitting down and watching a movie, paying attention to what they're saying, listening to a podcast, listening to what's going on in the podcast, right? I guess you don't have to sit down, but for whatever, like, you dedicate a period of time to learning the language by listening or reading. That's active input. There are other times of the day when I'm working out, I'm washing dishes, I'm cleaning the house, I'm driving, I'm doing other things, and I can put some background language learning stuff on, and I'm still listening, right? Like, I can drive the car and listen to a podcast at the same time, right? I can wash the dishes and listen to music at the same time, but my focus is less on the language and more on whatever I'm doing, right? And that's fine. That's better than fine. It's desirable, right? If you can find lots of periods of time in the day to include passive listening, where you're doing something else but also kind of listening, that's good. Yeah, you should do that as much as you can. Just don't forget to block out periods of your day where you say, I'm learning a language at this time. I'm not washing the dishes and learning language. I am just learning the language. I'm just getting input, or I'm just doing speaking practice. Yeah. How to improve speaking alone? Speak to people. That's the easiest question of the day. How do you improve your speaking? Find a conversation partner and talk to them. Okay. Find someone on the street and talk to them. Go to HelloTalk, the app HelloTalk, or HelloTalk.com. Find a conversation partner and talk to them in the language. That's how you improve speaking. Don't have a textbook. Okay. Talk to people. Do I think talent exists in language learning, or is it just based on hard work and dedication? Talent, I mean, depends what you mean by talent, but like you could say that language learning itself is a talent or a skill, right? You could say maybe I'm talented at crochet. Where do I have my little? Let me just run. I just crocheted this little guy a few weeks ago, just for fun. He had a very bad day, and so, he's not feeling very good. Anyways, I crocheted this guy, and you might say that I am talented at crocheting, but it's not a natural talent. I worked for a long time. I did a lot of like crochet exercises, and I made very simple. I just made a whole bunch of little squares at first. I made squares out of yarn. And then after a while, I learned how to make the square, and then I made scarves, right? Just a rectangle. And I worked on that for a long time. Then I made little circles. I learned how to make a circle, right? And then I made hats. Just a simple hat, just goes, just round. There's nothing fancy about it. Then I made little hats with little circles for eyes, right? And then I started making little characters, okay? That is how I became talented at crocheting. It's a skill. So, yeah, some people are talented language learners. Yeah, for sure, 100%. That's because they've worked at it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Okay. At my level, I get a lot of value from watching TV in my target language with English, my native language, subtitles. I catch the words and phrases that I can and learn new ones. Yeah, and like I said, that's what I do. I watch Thai shows on Netflix with English subtitles, and it's not like I'm under the delusion that this is the most valuable language learning time. Okay, I'm watching a show because I want to watch a show on Netflix, right? That's what I do for fun. Yeah, I watch French shows with my wife because we want to watch something on Netflix, right? With the English subtitles, I am paying more attention to the English subtitles than I am to the sounds of French or the sounds of Thai or the words that they choose. Okay, so it's not as active study time, but it's something. Yeah, and it does help. I do catch myself paying attention to the word choice and to some of the things that they say during the show. So yeah, it's not of no value. It's not of the most value, and it's also not of no value. It's of intermediate value. Okay, I'm listening on Roku on TV, but I'm typing on a laptop under a different account. Okay, not sure what your other account is. Maybe I missed something earlier. Okay, wait, I know I missed something. Okay, Ernesto says, actualmente entiendo lo que dices en este directo, pero aún no soy capaz de escribir en inglés. No soy capaz de expresarlo. Entonces, cuando dice que la gramática no es importante, no sé cómo reaccionar. Okay, entonces, I'm going to say this, just answer this question in Spanish because I'm not sure about Ernesto's English. Okay. La gramática sí es importante, pero no aprendemos la gramática. No aprendemos la gramática solo por estudiar la gramática, ¿verdad? Hay que entenderlo más profundamente. Y para hacer eso es importante tener mucho input, ¿okay? Input comprensible y practicar, ¿okay? Aprendemos a usar la gramática correctamente con input y output, ¿okay? Escuchar, leer, hablar y escribir. Eso es como podemos mejorar en la gramática. No solo estudiar las reglas de gramática, ¿okay? Las reglas de gramática, pues realmente no vale la pena memorizarlos. Okay. All right. Where else? So anyways, we need to learn grammar, but you don't need to study grammar to do that. You need to get lots of practice listening, reading, taking in the language, and also trying to regurgitate the language, okay? You practice, you make mistakes, you get better. That's how you learn grammar, not by studying the rules of grammar or trying to memorize the rules of grammar. That ain't where it's at. Okay. What else do we have? Okay. CLNA, you can listen to audio that has text a bunch, passive, then read it eventually. It helps connect the dots. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Somebody started mocking my English level and calling me a bozo. I never experienced something like that before. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Fortunately, I find most people in the language learning community are very supportive. But yeah, there's just some jerks out there who don't understand what it's like to learn a language. Probably whoever mocked your English, I would guess, probably does not speak any other language. So you already have a one-up on them, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. Just don't pay attention to idiots out there. Okay. Someone said, Game Nailed says, I read a lot of Goosebump books to learn German. They're written for children, so they're not overly complicated. They were very popular in the 90s and have been translated into many languages. Yeah, I actually have also used Goosebump books because they are easy and they're kind of entertaining. You know, there's like a mystery to them. It's a children's book, but also you're like, oops, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. It's a children's book, but you're also invested because you're trying to figure out will the monster get him? I mean, monster never actually gets him, right? But how are they going to escape? How are they going to escape the haunted house? How do they escape the mummy? Yeah, and they are translated into a lot of languages. So I find Goosebumps books to be pretty decent. And also, there's some debate about whether you should use books that have been translated. And okay, so a translation is usually not going to be as good as the original, right? Like, first of all, every time you translate something, you're going to change the text a little bit. So you're not going to get absolutely the same story, especially if it's a poem or something very poetic. They're going to change the meaning and some of the nuance when you translate it. You also want to read the most natural version of the language possible, right? And sometimes a literal translation does not sound very natural in the target language. But for when you're very beginning and you're not quite yet at the level where you're going to even notice the nuance of how words are used, sometimes a translation can actually be better because sometimes a translation will sort of flatten out the language, or how would I say this? Like we'll sort of use less idiomatic expressions. Like if there's an idiom that's used in the native translation, right? But in the native language version, but then that book gets translated and there's no equivalent idiomatic expression in the target language, then they just have to say whatever they mean rather than using the idiom, right? So there's some cases where for a beginner, a translation of a story can be easier to understand than a story that was written for native speakers. So it's something to consider, at least. Okay. Now that you live in Thailand, are you fully focused on getting Thai to a C1 now that you have a better environment working with you, or do you want to get to a B1 and move on? I'm only going to live in Thailand for another 4 months or so. So no, I'll never reach C1 in Thai. But I would be very happy if I can reach a B1 level and then maintain that by watching Thai shows, reading Thai comic books. I'm going to try to keep going to Thai restaurants and keep having conversations with Thai people, even in America or Canada. Okay, I live in an area where, this is from Game Nailed, I live in an area where there are hardly any German speakers, so I have to rely mostly on reading to learn the language. Well, that's not true, because you can find German speakers online, right? If you're watching this live stream, then you have access to German speakers. You have italki, you have HelloTalk, you have meetup.com, you have Zoom, right? You have all kinds of resources that are available. You have Reddit. And there's a subreddit for basically every language out there. There's all kinds of resources out there for connecting with other language learners, or maybe someone who's trying to learn your language and someone who can help teach you German, or someone who just speaks German and wants to interact with you on a certain topic, right? You can find people to speak German with. Yeah. Brandon says, hey, my friend, I just found your channel. How many languages can you speak? In regard from Australia, and can you speak Portuguese? I'm trying to learn Portuguese. No, eu não falo português. Tudo bem. Eu quero aprender a falar português. Meu português é péssimo. So I don't speak Portuguese. No, not really. I speak English as my native language, Spanish, French, Esperanto to varying degrees. I'm learning Thai. Right now I'm probably at like a, I don't know, A2 level or something. I'm coming up though. I'm leveling up as Moses would say. Laos 50500. Okay. Which come up says, man, Goosebumps were so cool back in the day. Yeah, it's true. All of my friends wanted the Goosebump books. Okay, are you feeling homesick because you don't know anything in the language? Isn't that related to yours? Nah. No, I don't really get homesick anymore. I've moved around the whole world many times. Oldest person you ever met who started learning a language? I don't know. Steve Kaufman comes to mind. He's probably not the oldest person I've met to start learning a language. I've probably met older people who have started learning Esperanto. But Steve Kaufman is probably in his late 60s, almost 70. Maybe he is 70. Still starting new languages. But, he's had a whole career. He's been learning languages for like 40 years. So now he knows the methods that work best for him for learning language. He knows exactly what to do when he starts learning a new language, right? Okay, how to start learning a new language when you don't know anything and the language isn't that related with your native one? I like Pimsleur. Pimsleur, I find, is a really good first step. Duolingo is an okay first step. Okay, it's free, so it's not a big investment. I'd say use Pimsleur, use Duolingo. Link can be very good if you use the mini stories in Link. I find Memrise and Anki to be okay for. Game Nailed says Steve Kaufman is 75 and he's still learning new languages. Memrise and Anki, I find, are both decent methods for getting vocabulary in a new language. Yeah, so those are the main things. Pimsleur, Duolingo, mini stories on Link, Pimsleur and Anki. Memrise and Anki. Yeah. Okay. So Lucas says, I've been trying to learn German for 3 weeks. I've noticed that a lot of language learning on YouTube talk about how to learn, how to improve in a language, but there isn't that much videos or advice about it. Right. So that's a problem, right? Like I make videos about how to learn languages. You watch my video, you learn what you should do in order to learn a language. Okay. I don't teach you any languages. Actually, well, that's not true. I used to not teach any language. Now like I said, and I'm going to repeat this again for those who are just joining in. I have this new YouTube channel that I just created that's all about learning English. I call it ThinkTem English. Okay.
Hello, my name is Teacher Aaron.
See, I just speak English very slowly, right? And then I go through different stories and stuff for those who are learning English. It's not explanations. Okay, it's not anything about the rules of English. Okay, if I go through a story about a dog, right? And I just take you through a story. Here's a dog. The dog is brown. The house is red, right? Here the dog is inside. Then the dog is outside. The tree is green. There's a bone on the ground. The grass is green. The ground is green, right? The dog digs a hole. It's very slow. I talk about the dog has dark brown ears and the dog has a light brown body, right? The grass is dark green and there's a light green bush, Okay, this is what you want in a language learning channel. I'm just saying this not to toot my own horn, but this channel, okay, there's other channels out there that will tell you like, all right, I'm going to teach you 3 different ways to say hello in English. You can say hello. You can say, how are you? You can say greetings. You can say, how do you do? Right. And then they teach you like, no, I don't want any of that when I'm learning a language. Okay. Let me look this up. How to learn Thai. Here's a YouTube channel. Okay. All of your absolute beginner questions answered, right? So here's someone teaching Thai, and they speak English throughout the entire video. Let's learn Thai. The first 10 Thai words you must know. All right, I guarantee the whole video is in English. And I apologize to...
I love using StreamYard. Well, that's easy.
Oops, let's watch this video.
Chris Brogan, I can make a show.
Okay.
Hi, guys. Let's learn Thai.
Okay, see, she's already speaking English. And it's a video about learning Thai.
In my every time that you should say corrupt at the end.
All right, 30 seconds into the video, she's still speaking English. There's a little bit. There's a little bit of Thai.
The fourth one is ขอบคุณ
Still speaking English, right? So that's what I don't like. I like comprehensible Thai. This is a channel that I like. Why? Because you open up the video and instantly she's speaking Thai. She doesn't speak English at all throughout the whole video. Now, it's no English, so it's intimidating because you're like, I can't watch a whole video 100% in Thai. Yes, you can. You watch this video, you're going to understand what she's saying, right? Because she points to the backpack, right? And then she says the word for backpack, grapao or grapan. I don't remember the word, grapao, right? She probably says it right here.
คุณพ่อทำอาหารเช้าแล้วก็เอาอาหารเอาขนมปังเนี่ยใส่ลงไปในกระเป๋า
Grapao. Okay, so there's the word for backpack, right? You didn't need to know that the word for backpack is grapao, right? But you can understand, you can follow the story. And this is a more intermediate level one. He has some very beginner level videos on here. Right? Like, let's take a look. What do you do if you don't know any Thai whatsoever and you want to learn Thai? Okay.
สีเขียว
สีเขียว right? So you don't know the Thai word for green, but you watch the video and now it doesn't matter. You've listened to him.
นี่คือสีเขียว
สีเขียว right? He just repeats the word over and over. สีเหลือง สีเหลือง or สีเหลือง right? And then he goes through shirts. Okay. นี่คือเสือสีแดง
อันนี้คือเสื้อ เสื้อ
เสื้อ
สีแดง
สีแดง right? And he just teaches you the word. You already learned the word for red. Okay, this is not like a brand new word. He taught you the word for red. And he's like, all right, let's look at a red shirt, right? Then you're going to learn the word for girl, right? And he says, this girl wears a red shirt. It's very easy. It's a very easy progression, 100% in Thai. He didn't need to use English. He didn't say, all right, today I'm going to teach you the word for shirt. That's a waste of time because you're listening to English when he could have just been saying the word for shirt in Thai, right? I do a very similar thing on my channel, on my English channel.
Hello.
Right? I have some like more intermediate videos, and then just watch me, here we have Mr. Spock.
Spock. This is Mr. Spock's face. Mr. Spock has 2 ears.
Right? And I already went through some of the ears and stuff in this video, right? I have 2 eyes. I have a mouth, right? I have a mouth. I have 2 ears, right? And then we go through some of the pictures on here, right?
Eyes. 1, 2.
2 eyes,
2
right?
eyes. Mr. Spock has 2 eyes. Okay. Does Mr. Spock...
All right. Even if you don't understand any English, you just watch this video and you learn the word for 2 at least, right? And you learn the word for eyes and you learn the word for ears. Okay. That's how you learn a language. It's not through going to a YouTube channel that teaches you, you don't, I just don't look for a teacher who uses English to teach me another language. Vi havas 2 okulojn. Yes. Vi pravas. Mi havas 2 okulojn. Okay. Sorry, I'm looking through some of the comments here. I find novels. Think them French coming. I thought about doing other languages, but I would just feel more comfortable teaching only my native language. And I would highly encourage someone, if anyone is out there and you speak French or Spanish or whatever language, and you want to start doing videos like this in your native language, I would work with you and, help you develop a channel, especially if someone out there is learning Thai or, your native language is Thai or you're fluent in Esperanto or something. I'd be very glad to help someone create a channel like that. But I decided I'm going to do this channel in my native language. And then I am interested in helping, helping develop other channels similar to this, right? Maria Terrano says, tamen gramatiko estas grava, however, grammar is important. Tiel oni ne povas lerni nur per recta. I know my collar is messed up. It's been like that the whole stream. I can't fix it. Tiel oni ne povas lerni nur per la recta metodo. Mi ne konsentas, mi ne tute konsentas. Mi kredas ke oni ja povas lerni nur per la recta metodo. Oni ja povas, ĉu ne? Estas homoj kiuj ja faris ĝin. Yeah. I mean, there just are people, watch this video. Right? If anyone hasn't seen this video yet, I recommend it. It's a long video. So he starts off the video saying, I don't speak any Arabic. I'm going to spend 1 year learning Arabic. And then he used just this direct method, right? Just this method of using only Arabic, no English, no grammar study whatsoever. And then he ends the video and he's like, all right, let me tell you how I learned Arabic. And he does it in presumably very good Arabic. I don't speak Arabic, so I can't judge. What does recta mean? Direct. It's like recto in español, right? Recto. Direct, straight. Anyways, this video has already gone longer than I had planned, so I'm going to cut it off here. I also have to get to a meeting here in just a second. Thanks to all who joined and watched. I feel like we actually had a very productive conversation today, so I will probably do another live stream at the same time next week if you are interested in watching that. So, thanks.